Welcome back, everyone. And let me add my thanks to Patricia's, to our latest panelists, but also to all the speakers that we had this morning. And we had a really stimulating set of speakers and some great discussion there. We started off after the opening session hearing from the French Minister for Ecological Transition, Barbara Pompili, who presented a really impressive range of topics that the French presidency will have to address when it takes over on the 1st of January. And she grouped them into what she called four equal priorities. Firstly, climate change, decarbonisation, where she referred to both the path through the emissions trading system, but also the national emission reductions commitments, different instruments tackling this. And of course, there's a much broader set of instruments under the Fit for 55 package. She also really stressed the importance of addressing climate and social ambition jointly. And I think that was a recurring theme throughout the morning. Secondly, she talked about biodiversity and a cluster of issues there. The COP15, the Biodiversity International Conference, which will take place in Kunming, and the EU having a robust position at that. She talked about the nature restoration law that's in preparation, and she talked about forest policy. But she also talked about aligning agriculture with the farm to fork strategy and referred to the green taxonomy, which will identify what kinds of investments can be considered as actually sustainable. Thirdly, she talked about the circular economy and shifting the economic model, making particular reference to eco-design. And fourthly, she referred to pollution and a number of issues related to that, endocrine disrupting chemicals, banning the export of chemicals that are banned for use in the EU. So an impressive range of topics which then were picked up during the rest of the morning. And our second keynote speaker, Maria Neira from the World Health Organization, she gave us a very strong and clear message about just how positive our messages and almost expressing some kind of bewilderment of why don't people get it, because it's good for the environment and it's good for health and it saves a lot of money. And she really pointed out the co-benefits that come from tackling climate change, the benefits that derive for health. Her comparison with the tobacco industry was, I think, very apt, also very sobering, reminding us that it took 50 years from the moment that the proof was there that tobacco was causing cancer to the real action to address that. Some would say that's not completely there yet. And I loved her kind of image, or the image she put in my head, of huge signs outside petrol stations saying fossil fuels kill. Not because the EB or one of its members have sort of climbed up a pole and put it there, but because it's a government requirement in the way that labels on cigarette packets are. I thought that was quite a powerful point that she made. And then we came to our panel, and the panel was kicked off by Tetiana Stagnik, voice from the Youth and Environment Europe, who reminded us that we need to take the freedoms of future generations seriously. And she made a rather nice comparison of the EU with a kind of poor student who hadn't done their homework, and pointed out that the 55% target, net target, by 2030 for greenhouse gas reduction, emission reductions, is well short of the more than 65% that's required by science. So yes, a step in the right direction, but by far from enough. And that we are heading into a world of something more like 2.5 degrees Celsius. She emphasizes no safe level of pollution, the importance of respecting World Health Organization guidelines. And she also brought in the financial questions, which were picked up by others, that we need to end financial support to polluters. The polluters must pay, that we need ambitious and actionable nature restoration laws, and we mustn't have GDP as the main measure of progress. And finally, she mentioned that not enough funding goes directly to youth organizations, pointing out that a lot of this goes to other organizations who work with youth, and youth could actually probably do better things with it than others. And And then we also heard from Françoise Bonnet, bringing a voice from cities and regions, who reminded us just how important those levels are, the local, municipal and regional levels. Of course, they can't do everything, and she underlined that, but they can help. They cannot, for example, my example, decide on the standards that vehicle manufacturers will have to comply with, but they can establish low emission zones. And in fact, the more we fail to drive sustainability at the national, European or global level, the more important it is that the local, municipal and regional levels just move ahead and get on with it. And she gave several examples of cities doing just that. Some of them linked to the non-toxic circular economy concept. For example, tires as a major source of microplastics pollution. And we also heard from Asad Rehman from War on Want, who brought a very welcome global perspective to sort of mark the EU's scorecard, but also really highlighted the issue of fairness, and of course those two issues being very closely linked. And he reminded us about the rich world's hoarding of vaccines and the sort of hypocrisy of, you know, no one is safe until anyone's safe slogans ringing hollow in that context. And he spoke about the deep imbalances of power, deep inequalities both within and between countries, and the fact that inequality is getting worse. And he asked the question, the policy agendas in the EU, they're addressing the environmental crisis, but are they fair? And I think that's a fairly key test that he was asking us to subject them to. He also gave us a stark warning that we have only 500 gigatons left before we hit the 1.5, crash through the 1.5 limit, and said that we actually only have a 1 in 3 chance that we will stay within it, and expressed incredulity that this is public policy, while none of us would board a bus with that chance of arriving safely. He spoke of there being a kind of modern form of carbon colonialism, that we've moved from climate denialism to mitigation denialism. He was one of those who also spoke about the scale of finance being pitifully inadequate. And gave the message that, the North's message to the South is do what I say, not what I do, and pleaded for ambition and imagination to fix this broken world, appealing also for more political will and more joined up thinking. And we also heard from Francesco Gaeta from the French Ministry for Ecological Transition, who echoed, of course, many of the points his minister had made and elaborated on them, explaining that the French presidency will try to push the common position of Council in an ambitious direction. We know that they don't control the Council, so there's no illusions about that, but he pledged some level of ambition, mentioning that France is part of the Reach Up coalition, a group of the more ambitious countries in the REACH area. And he also, like the minister, emphasized the importance of a just transition, that the losers of transition must not be left behind, all must contribute, saying that we mustn't limit to just two mechanisms, the Just Transition Mechanism, Social Climate Fund, but other financial mechanisms, the NRRPs, National Resource and Recovery Plans, the Multi-Annual Financial Program, they must all be aligned with the do no harm principle, as must private investments. Well, I think I'm probably running up to the end of my time, but I want to mention, of course, we were disappointed that Veronica Manfredi from the European Commission was unable to join due to the technical problems, and it seems we're a little bit jinxed with this, because some of you who joined our conference last year will remember that my conversation with Commissioner Sienkiewicz got off to a bit of a rough start when they had technical problems as well. So hopefully we can solve these in the future. But I think many of the other comments did actually address the role of the Commission. So the Commission's voice somehow did come through, and hopefully the Commission's ears will also pick up on the messages that have come out of this. Well, I'm going to conclude at that, and I'm going to ask Patrick if he could present the results of the second Slido question, which is where you gave your feedback to us. So I'm going to hand to him to do that, and also he will introduce the afternoon session, Before doing so, I'd like to thank you all for your participation so far, especially our excellent speakers and panelists, and of course our donors, the European Commission and the German Environment Ministry. So, Patrick, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, this way. So I'll just take a few words on the second question. So this is a complicated question. We're asking is what is stopping decision makers from making substantive changes, even though the message on the risks of the environment, climate and health crisis are crystal clear. So we know what's happening. Why aren't we progressing as fast as we should? So coming in at first at 71% of respondents, and there are 97 respondents, powerful lobbying interest by some business creates a system lock-in. So there's a type of governance lock-in. So the conclusion is major efforts are needed to change access rights, governance issues, transparency, balance of influence. Okay, so there is a problem. It's governance and power imbalances, and I think it's fixable. The second came in second at 67%. Is our economic system guided by GDP growth priorities and short-term profits ties decision makers and businesses' hands, and we need a refocus on different business models, move from policy from GDP growth towards well-being and sustainability, and like that we can address that major blockage. The third one, identified at 63%, was that ideological, economic and political visions oppose sustainability. So for this we need a review of economic and political thinking to ensure it's fit for the future. And we heard also this discussion around in Mexico, we heard it in cities. We need to share what the benefits are, the win-wins are to make it move forward. Then much lower down at 25% is decision makers are making progress, but it's understandably difficult. Oh no, sorry, I jumped one. At 23.5%, concerns about international competitiveness are making decision makers excessively cautious. There is a problem, but it's not our fault, and we need other people to fix it. And that came at 25%. Then there was a sort of a 6% basically having great sympathy for caution. So decision makers are making progress, but it's understandably difficult to change direction. So it's tough, but we can't, we understand it. Finally, 0%, no one basically concluded that progress is as fast as we can hope for. And everyone is already acting on the information. So 0% of the people said we should stop complaining and start applauding. Okay, so I think the message is pretty clear across all of this. We've got a lot of work to do. So let's then think for this afternoon session. First of all, it's lunch break for you now. At 1:45, we're going to come back for those who want to understand. The Mural tool will have 10 roundtables, thematic roundtables, from climate change to governance to zero pollution industry. We're going to look at visions, inspiring practice, the need for system change, and who can do what. So there'll be 10 tables. The tables start at 2, but at 1:45 I'll go through the process so you can get familiar with the tools. If you know everything, just come at 2. And if you want to see how it works, come at 1:45. We have 1 hour for the first table. Then we have a break. We jump to a next table, so you can actually join 2 different tables. And then we'll report back, and we have 10 EEB members coming to report back the results on basically what is the vision that we all hope for, what is the inspiring practice that should inspire us all so that we can get the momentum going faster, what is the system change we need to address, because ultimately small steps are not enough, and finally who can do what, because we only move forward if we actually do it. So I really hope that you join us. The roundtables will only be as good as the attendance, and therefore we need all of you to join us. But in the meantime, enjoy your lunch and see you back at 1:45. Thank you. And also thanks here to all the people helping in the office here.